The rain wasn't just falling, it was punishing. Horizontal sheets slammed against windshields, pelted rooftops, and turned Savannah's elegant streets into rivers of uncertainty. Street drains clogged in minutes, and the smell of pine and wet concrete clung to the air like a memory. At the Southside Distribution Center, tension crackled louder than the thunder. One by one, employees walked into the manager's office with soaked jackets and excuses. School closures, flooded roads, sickness, broken sump pumps, the kind of day no one wanted to be outside, except for Tiana Brooks. "Are you sure?" Her supervisor, a tired man in his 50s named Harold, asked, his eyes flicking to the blinking red warning on the weather advisory screen. "Nobody expects you to deliver today. It's your day off." Tiana zipped up her USPS-issued raincoat. "They expect their mail, Harold. Doesn't matter if it's raining or if it's the end of the world. Somebody's waiting on something today." And just like that, she was gone. She had the Glenworth route, the rich part, the mansions with iron gates and winding drives, where mail was often signed for by assistants or delivered into brass-plated boxes under stone arches. By the time she reached her final address, it was already 6:42 p.m. The sun had long abandoned the storm. Thunder mumbled in the distance. Her hands ached from gripping the wet steering wheel, and her uniform stuck to her skin like a second colder flesh. Glenworth Estate sat on a hill like it owned the sky. The road leading up was slick, its bricks shiny and dangerous. No wonder no other deliveries were made today. Nobody in their right mind would trek up here. But Tiana didn't wait for dry days to do her job. She tucked the single envelope deeper into the inner pocket of her coat, shielding it from the rain. The red stamp across its front read, "Time-sensitive, legal." The gate buzzed and blinked red. She pressed the call button. Nothing. She tried again. Static. No voice, no click, no welcome. Then the door in the guardhouse opened slightly, and a man in a pressed uniform peered out. "No deliveries accepted in this weather." "House orders," he said curtly, eyeing her damp uniform with thinly veiled disdain. "I'm just here to leave this," Tiana said, holding up the envelope in a Ziploc sandwich bag she'd pulled from her lunch kit. "It's marked urgent. You can leave it at the gate, but it won't be brought in until tomorrow." "That's not good enough." The man frowned. "Look, I've got orders. They don't want a wet mess on the porch." Tiana stood silently. Lightning cracked behind her, and for a moment her silhouette looked carved from stone. Not angry, not dramatic, just there, steadfast. "If I could just place it under the box flap." "No." He started to close the door. She didn't plead. Instead, she knelt by the mailbox near the gate, rummaged through her coat, and pulled out a clear plastic grocery bag. Carefully, she sealed the envelope inside, double-knotting the ends. She took out a permanent marker from her satchel, wrote in large slanted letters on the outside of the plastic, "Please read, today matters." Then, removing her own coat, the one layer protecting her from the storm, she wrapped it around the top of the mailbox, anchoring it over the slit where the envelope would slide, ensuring no drop of water could sneak in. And then she turned to leave. She didn't know that behind a curtain on the third floor of the estate, a man had been watching the entire time. James Halberg, 42, didn't believe in much anymore. Not people, not systems, not promises. His empire had been built on ruthless instinct, identifying what others didn't see until it was too late. But in that moment, through the rain-streaked glass, he saw something he hadn't in a long time: integrity without witness. She didn't know he was home. She hadn't grandstanded. She didn't know her actions were being recorded. She'd simply done what she believed was right. He watched her walk away, back toward her dented delivery truck, hair plastered to her face, soaked through to the skin. The mailbox, her coat draped like a shield over it, stood like a monument to the old world, one where honor meant something. James descended the marble stairs silently and opened the front door himself. The envelope was cold in his hand. The plastic crinkled. Inside was a letter from the federal court, an injunction, a 36-hour deadline. A signature missing could freeze one of his biggest holding firms. Billions on the line. Today mattered. He turned the envelope over and reread her scrawl. Please read, "Today matters." In the office, he found the delivery log. She wasn't even supposed to be on duty. A substitute for someone sick. She had volunteered. Again. It wasn't the first time. A quick inquiry at the post office the next morning told him this: Tiana Brooks had covered extra routes during Hurricane Idalia. She had hand-delivered packages to immunocompromised residents during COVID. She had brought insulin to a diabetic man in a mobile park during the New Year's flood of 2023, when FedEx and UPS trucks turned back. She just shows up, the supervisor had said, scratching his beard. That's her thing. When James walked into the South Side office at 10:03 a.m. the next morning, heads turned. He wore jeans and a raincoat, still drenched. His eyes scanned the workers sorting bins behind the counter until they landed on her. She was holding a stack of Amazon-sized packages against her chest, ready to head back out. Tiana Brooks? She turned, startled. Yeah, I'm James Halberg. She blinked, unmoved. You're the guy from Glenworth. I am. Pause. She waited. I read the letter. It saved me millions. I'm glad it got there. There was something about the way she said it, not eager for thanks, not brushing it off. Just matter of fact. Like she would have done it for a dollar envelope the same way she did for a billionaire's lawsuit. You weren't even supposed to work. She shrugged. I had the keys. I had the route. People wait for their mail. Sometimes it's just bills. But sometimes it's the last chance they have. He looked at her, really looked this time. A soaked uniform, a torn glove on one hand, the kind of weariness that comes from doing the right thing in silence, over and over again. That night he returned, not with flowers, with his attorney. The rain had passed, but the street still shimmered with its memory. The next morning, the air held that crisp wash scent of something reset, like Savannah itself had exhaled. Tiana sat at the back of the post office, eating instant noodles from a paper cup with a plastic fork. Her feet ached. Her route had been reassigned, but the morning volume was still insane. Parcels, letters, missed drop-offs, and a new trainee who kept losing the scanner. She was mid-bite when the door creaked open behind her. She didn't turn, probably Marcus needing a hand again. But the air changed, heavier, more deliberate. The smell of cologne, subtle and expensive, registered seconds before the voice did. I hope I'm not interrupting lunch. Tiana froze, fork halfway to her mouth. James Halberg stood in the doorway, wearing the same rain-stained coat as yesterday, his collar turned up. But this time he wasn't alone. A man in a charcoal suit stood beside him, tall, pale, glasses, the kind of haircut that cost more than Tiana's monthly car insurance. He held a leather briefcase the color of dried blood and the expression of someone who rarely heard the word no. "We just need 5 minutes," James said. Tiana wiped her hands and stood. "There's a broom closet that's quieter." The lawyer looked mildly offended, but James followed her without hesitation. Inside the cramped space between mop handles and cardboard boxes, the light flickered overhead like a nervous habit. "You didn't have to come," she said. "The letter got there. That's that." James looked around the narrow room and smiled. "You didn't have to work on your day off, but you did." The lawyer cleared his throat and opened the briefcase. "Mr. Hallberg is prepared to offer you a position." Tiana raised an eyebrow. "A position?" "Director of Logistics," James said, cutting the man off. "For the Hallberg Hope Foundation, we oversee charitable supply chains, food, medicine, housing kits. But our operations need someone who understands delivery from the ground up." She stared at him, expression unreadable. "Pay?" she finally asked. "5 times what you make now. Full benefits. You'd oversee 3 regions to start. Grow from there." Tiana laughed, not unkindly, just stunned. "You think this is a movie?" "No, but I do think it's rare to find someone who does the right thing when no one's watching. That's leadership." She leaned against the mop handle. "You don't know me. I know you worked during Idalia. I know you covered sick co-workers during the pandemic, unpaid. I know you brought a veteran his medication during a power outage in a neighborhood where the streetlights were out." "I didn't do those things for a job," she said. "That's the point." "I'm not offering you a favor," James said softly. "I'm offering you a mission." Tiana looked away, toward the dusty window where a sliver of light cut through the grime. "If I say no, what happens?" James smiled again, not triumphant. Respectful. "Then I thank you for delivering a letter that saved my company, and I keep looking for someone who gets it." There was silence in the closet, a kind of hum that wasn't coming from the flickering light, but from something more internal, a crossroads humming in her chest. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. Instead, she asked, "How many postal workers you think live paycheck to paycheck?" The lawyer blinked. "How many single moms sorting Amazon boxes at 6 a.m. while their kids eat breakfast in daycare?" she continued. "You want to hire me? Fine. But what if we build something instead?" James tilted his head. "Go on." "A program. We call it Rain or Shine," she said. "A fund for male workers from vulnerable communities. Gear, transport, daycare stipends, emergency coverage, real support." The lawyer began to interject, but James raised a hand. His eyes never left hers. "Would you lead it? I'd build it. I'd train the first batch, but I don't want an office and a fancy chair. I want results." For a moment, neither spoke. Then James nodded, slow and deliberate. "You build it your way. I fund it." "Deal." Tiana didn't shake his hand. She just smiled. "Only if we include hurricane hazard pay." James laughed, the sound echoing awkwardly off the mop handles and cleaning supplies. When they stepped out, the front lobby of the post office was silent. Harold stood near the counter, eyebrows arched. A few workers leaned over the divider, trying not to look like they were listening. Tiana brushed past them like it was nothing. "You okay?" Marcus whispered as she passed. "Yeah," she said. "Just had a visitor." "What did he want?" She didn't answer. She just slipped her lunch into the trash and picked up her scanner. Outside, the wind was picking up again, but Tiana Brooks stepped into it like she always had, without flinching. 6 months later, Savannah had bloomed into spring, not just in flowers, but in reputation. Rain or shine, the initiative born in a broom closet on a rainy Tuesday was now fully operational across 5 cities. The pilot program had exceeded every projection, not because it had big money behind it, though it did, but because it had Tiana Brooks. She hadn't changed much, still drove her own truck, still wore her postal hat low over her brow, but her days no longer began with loaded bins and crumpled manifests. They began with planning meetings, field calls, and Zoom check-ins with coordinators in places like Baton Rouge and Newark. The difference, she still knew every mail route by heart. And today, she stood just outside the Halberg Hope Foundation's downtown campus, in a pressed navy blazer over jeans, her old raincoat folded neatly over her arm like a flag. Inside, the air buzzed with camera flashes, suited donors, and lanyard-wearing delegates. The walls were plastered with banners, "Rain or Shine, Delivering Dignity," in bold navy letters. The logo, a mailbag beneath a sun and storm cloud, gleamed under the chandelier light. But Tiana kept her eyes low. She wasn't here for the stage. She was here for the carriers. Inside the green room, 5 new recruits were prepping nervously, all of them frontline workers, from Detroit, Memphis, Atlanta. They looked up when she entered. "Ms. Brooks," one of them said, standing like they'd been caught off guard. "Relax," she said, smiling. "We're not saluting. You're here because you already showed up." One woman, maybe 22, wiped her hands on her uniform. "You really started this just from a rainy day?" Tiana chuckled. "Nah, that was just the day someone noticed. But this started years before, back when we had to figure out how to do our routes in floodwater, with broken vans and babies at home." The room fell silent. Then one of the men, tall with tired eyes, said, "I haven't had insurance in 3 years. You don't know what this means." "I do," she said simply. "That's why it's real." Out in the hall, the music began. String quartet. Too fancy for her taste, but whatever. This wasn't her show, it was theirs. "Ready?" came James Halberg's voice, suddenly beside her. He wore no tie today, a quiet signal, a nod to her world. "Always," she said. They walked into the main hall together. Cameras turned, applause rose like thunder, but James didn't walk to the mic. He stepped back and gestured to her. Tiana frowned. "We didn't plan that." "I know," he whispered, "but this story isn't mine to tell." A pause. Then, steady, deliberate, she walked forward. The applause softened as she reached the podium. She didn't look for the cameras. She didn't need to. Her voice was steady but low, like she was still standing on a porch, explaining a delayed package to someone's grandmother. "I've carried a lot of letters," she began, "in storms, in summer heat, through curfews and broken sidewalks. A few laughs, nervous, respectful. But the truth is, most of the time people don't see the carriers. Not really. They see the uniform. The mail, but not the person holding it." She looked out, into the seats, into the press gallery, into the faces that had never walked her route, but had built skyscrapers on her numbers. People trust us with their good news and their last chances. Sometimes the last check they ever get, sometimes the court letter they were dreading. We don't always know what we're carrying, but we carry it like it matters. A beat. That day in the rain, I didn't stay because I thought someone was watching. I stayed because I knew someone was waiting. There's a difference. Silence. You gave me a fancy title, she added, glancing at James with a wry smile. But I'm still a carrier. I still deliver. And so do all the people we're lifting up now. Rain or shine isn't about me. It's about them. It's about showing up when it would be easier to stay home and giving dignity to people who do hard things quietly. Thunderous applause now, but Tiana just nodded once and stepped away. James returned to the mic for the closing. "She didn't just bring a letter," he said. "She brought a standard, a reminder that in a world of excuses, someone still chose effort. That in a system built to overlook, someone stood up soaked to the bone and said, 'Today matters.'" He raised his hand toward her. "And that's why we're here." The lights dimmed. The program concluded. But the story didn't. Outside, after the crowd thinned, Tiana stood alone by the sidewalk. She looked up at the sky. Clear. The kind of day you dream about during storms. A kid, maybe 8 or 9, passed by on a bike with a tiny postal bag slung over his shoulder. He stopped. "Hey," he said, "are you the lady from the letter?" Tiana smiled. "Depends. What letter?" He grinned, then pedaled off. She looked down at her old raincoat, still folded under her arm. Didn't matter if people remembered her name. They'd remember the work, and she'd keep showing up, rain or shine.